Hello, everybody. A warm welcome to another edition of Across Retail Talks. My name is Reinhard Williwater. I'm the publisher of Across Magazine, and I'm very pleased that so many people across Europe are here again. The topic is also a very, very special one. We will talk about the role of gastronomy in a pandemic or a post-pandemic world. This is the 5th edition of our online talks, and I'm really happy that we could establish this format so good and we can attract so many visitors. A top-class discussion group is ready. Klaus Striebich will lead this discussion as an expert moderator. And please take part in the discussion and ask questions. Use the chat function. And in the next few days, we will send a summary and a video of this discussion via our newsletter. So that's it from my side at the beginning. I now hand over to Klaus Striebich. Klaus, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Reinhard. Very nice to see you and hear you all. And Across Retail Talks number 5. Restaurant and gastronomy has a former rising star turned into a fallen angel is our topic today. And I want to welcome a fantastic group of people who is discussing with us. And I'm very glad that we have a wide range of different locations, different views, different concepts with us. And I think it will be very vibrant, exciting, and hopefully helpful for you all, what we find out today. So let's get started. Again, the remark, please, if you have any question, if you have any remark, whatever it is, please raise your hand or write your questions into the questionnaire in the F&A, which is down on the, in the line, in the chat or in the F&A section. So we will be then try to forward it to those one who could answer it properly. I will start in a classical order. So Sofia Selberg is with us. Sofia is from Stockholm. She is a consultant and works in Sweden, is also writing across Europe or across the globe to the food service industry. Sofia, could you give us a little introduction what you are doing? And could you give us also a little sign how the Nordics at the moment look like concerning restaurant and gastronomy business? Sofia, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Klaus. Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. First, a little bit about myself. I run Conceptual Consulting. It's a hospitality and food service consulting firm based here in Stockholm. And we help businesses and organizations with support on trends and market insights, strategy and concept development. And when I started my consulting career about 20 years ago, I was working directly much with the hotels, the restaurants, the food retailers and the food producers. But in the later years, my client base has widened. So these last years, I've worked much with other types of players that see food and beverage as an increasingly important part in their business, such as cinemas and opera houses, the Royal Opera House here in Stockholm, and concert house. And then I do the writing in the trade journals. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you. And regarding your question about the Nordic countries, the situation is, of course, very bad, just as in all the other countries. We have seen a downturn of the restaurant industry in Sweden since March 1st with 44%. And this is the average in Sweden, but in the bigger cities, the downturn is much higher. So Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Malmö are the worst off. So this is basically the worst parts. We haven't had any lockdowns or shutdowns. So relatively speaking, then you could say that the restaurant and gastronomy part is well off compared to other countries, but still the business is struggling. We were informed yesterday that in Sweden we will now have a shutdown of alcohol service from 10 p.m. in the evenings, which is now a big problem. So it is a suffering business, and everybody's struggling both in hospitality and in food service.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sophia. One more question. Do you think after a down of 40% and more that the industry in Sweden or in the Nordics could survive? Are you facing already with lots of insolvency cases, things like that?
Yes, definitely. So a lot of companies are going out of business, and of course it's difficult for the individual operators, and it depends on if you have a reserve from before. So yes, it's a difficult situation.
And any support from government or the politics?
Oh yes, yes, we do have short-time working allowances and financial supports, postponing of tax payments. But then again, it's not enough for many players. So
thank you so much, Sophia. I would love to welcome Walter Seib. Walter Seib is the representative from HMS Host International, one of the biggest and largest operators in travel and retail stations. Walter, I suppose your situation is really not easy. Could you give us an insight where you are with your company at the moment?
Yeah, we are, as you may know, we are part of Autokiller Group, stock listed in Milan. As a business division, we run 19 countries from Ireland to New Zealand. And I think there's no doubt that we are hit twice. One is we're in travel. You see the international travel more or less is not existing anymore. So the world came to a standing still on tourism. And secondly, we're in food and beverage, which is not either a great story at the moment. And I think as a group at the moment, year to date, we lost about 63% of our sales. So that's also not a great story, frankly speaking. And the situation is quite simple. Cash is king. So in the end, we are working tireless over the last couple of months to preserve as much cash as possible in order to get through that crisis. And but having said this, is we in our industry we had many crises. You know, we sometimes we forget. You know, with terrorist attacks, with volcano ashes, we had SARS. So we September 11. This one is much deeper and takes much longer. So we need to hold our breath, but also to see some good signs, frankly speaking. And it's quite interesting that we don't hear a lot in Europe about it, but you see especially domestic businesses in Asia, but also in, for instance, in New Zealand is picking up quite well. I can tell you the Chinese domestic business for food and beverage, but also in air passengers is already above pre-COVID. So I think we shouldn't be too negative about the future. I think the future will bring some light, but we need to hang in there and stay strong for the next couple of months.
That's fantastic words, but I need to follow up with another question. So this week we heard that a vaccine will arrive. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but nobody could really, I would say, imagine when the travel retail will recover. So you have lots of travel retail station airports you are operating. How could you manage with no real, let's say, future outlook to survive? I think at the moment there's 80-90% minus or more, or you have still closed shop there. How could you manage?
That's what I said before. In the end, I think cash is king, and we shut it down many outlets. Frankly speaking, we restructured our company, our business. In my division, we let about 50% of the associates go. In some parts of the world, we get government subsidies, especially on labor cost. On the other hand, your fixed costs are still there, like rents and other things. So in the end, it's about getting in connection with your clients to renegotiate contracts. And as I said before, to preserve as much cash as possible. In the meantime, we started to reopen outlets, and the strategy is quite clear. And I said this yesterday in a global call to our people as well. I said, in the end, cash is king, and we can't afford to open any facilities in our system which are cash losing or cash draining. And that's one part of the side of the coin. The other coin, of course, is that as a group, and that's public information, of course, that we renegotiated our bank governance and our liquidity position. as many other companies as well. And so far, I can say in our business, we are the only company which didn't have a capital increase yet. So far, we're managing the cash position, given the circumstances, quite well.
Sounds positive, and it sounds also that it's not boring times. Thank you very much, Walter. We have Heiner with us. Heiner from Austria. Heiner has a lot of nice individual restaurants, a little chain, and with different background and different target. Heiner, how is the situation in Austria with your different concepts, which are famous and popular for meet and greet? Heiner, welcome.
So, hello, thank you for the invitation. The situation in Austria is quite, it's not too good at the moment, let's say it like that, because we get the news today that we will probably have a total lockdown tomorrow or after the weekend. Austria is a very tourism oriented country, so this really hurts. And if our winter seasons in the mountains will not happen, we will have a big problem here. So this will affect also our business in the cities. And so we still hope that at least a part of it will get better, and we will have some of our winter business. For our company, we had the total lockdown in March and June. We restarted very well. We opened 3 restaurants in this period. 2 of them, one 3 weeks ago, another one 2 weeks ago, which were open just a few days. And we still have them open for delivery services and takeaway. It's a bit difficult not to know and not to what will happen and to make any business plans or plans for the future. So we live from one day to another, but we're doing quite well.
Sounds also good. So the industry seems to has a strong backbone, which is good. But for those people who do not really know what you're doing, Heiner, so you have different concepts like Soul Kitchen, we see it in the back. You have Indigo, which is a more, let's say, classical concept, which could be located also in shopping malls or in downtown areas. You have Glorious Bastards, which has won an award in the past, which is a place where people meet, gather, and have a drink and like to enjoy. Is there a difference between the different concepts you are operating at the moment, or is it all the same in the same way developing?
It is very, let's say, we did have a very, very good season for the Glorious Bastard because our clubs weren't allowed to open, and I think it is just the next level below the clubs where young people can meet, have fun, and it's not just eating. It is also a kind of a bar feeling and get together place. So there we had even a plus to last year. My Indigo, which is a healthy counter service concept, was affected altogether over the summer with about 10% minus, because we didn't have tourists and we didn't have the office business, and all the others were more or less the same. Depending on how big their outdoor spaces were, because we had quite a good summer. So those places who had a great big outdoor space were doing very well.
Fantastic. Thanks. We press thumbs that the new openings will succeed, and there's still room for improvement. Thanks for that. We have Ibrahim with us. Ibrahim coming from London, from Portland Design. He's doing lots of international projects all over the world. He's linked to the travel retail industry. He's linked to lots of businesses like downtown areas in UK. Ibrahim, welcome. Could you give us an insight from your point of view, how you see the situation in the industry and what's going on in UK, especially in downtown areas. Well, Ibrahim. Ibrahim?
I did that deliberately just so I can say, I'm sorry, I was on mute. So yeah, so thank you very much for your invitation. And how is it looking? I mean, very similar in sentiment to Austria. I think we're kind of got a lot of challenges here. We've got lockdown at the moment, but you know, I take the view that much of the change that we are seeing in retail and F&B and in shopping malls was coming. I think the trends that we're seeing have just been accelerated by COVID. That's the first thing. I would say that the rush and the drive to digital is making us rethink the physical, rethink what the shop is for, what role does F&B play in a wider development in activating our public spaces, and how does the F&B blend and connect to retail? Because the new retail in the future will be less and less about transaction and more about experience and sociability and learning and many other things beyond buying stuff. And that's why I think F&B is going to play a bigger and increasing role in our development and in the redefinition of retail. I think that's very, very key.
Fantastic. One question to that, Ibrahim. Could you give us an example or how then the industry could monetize it? So how to bring experience into, let's say, cash in the cash box? How could we bring this experience into, let's say, on a bill?
I think the way to create new revenue models where you don't have transaction. Of course, I'm talking about retail less than F&B, but the way to think about how we can create new revenue models is think about how a retail experience will impact media. How does a retail experience, and in F&B, how does it drive traffic into social platforms? How does it drive traffic into online e-commerce sites? If the physical space has a role and can impact that, then it has a value. What we have to do as landlords, as property owners, is capture the data that demonstrates the value of physical space to what we call media impressions. And we can see many examples of that. We can see many sports brands like Converse, we can see Patagonia, we can see Nike, all creating experiences that are driving media impressions, where they're bringing physical and digital together, where our consumers in the future will not distinguish between physical and digital.
Okay, fantastic. You are also very much engaged in UK into high street development and in discussions, and there's a new created trust or board, if I'm right. Could you give us also some details about that?
Yes, it's the UK government's what they call the High Street Task Force. It's a board of 10 people, and I'm very fortunate and privileged to be appointed to that board, where we advise the government, the minister, on the future of our high streets and how we're going to bring life back to our high streets and what does that mean. And my stance, my particular role in that is the future of the high street. And what trends are driving that. And I think if I have to summarize it, high streets, that includes not just in the UK, across Europe, we must get away from the addiction to retail. We're addicted to retail. We need to think about our high streets, and we need to shift from what I call a shopping rhythm to a community rhythm. And that applies to shopping centers. It applies to all places. We've got to think less and less about transactional shopping and more about how we bring different uses, different blending of uses to create community. Of course, with retail and F&B at the heart.
Already some takeaways or ideas or examples you could give to the community or to the audience here? Some specifics?
I think it's early days yet, particularly in the UK, but we are seeing the development at King's Cross in London is very interesting, and I think that's beginning to play to that. We can see the development called Markthal in Rotterdam is very interesting. We can see we're working in Istanbul on a development called Galata Port, which is combining the Bosphorus with a very, very kind of cool, trendy area, and how that comes together. So many developments we can see that are driving community and mixing workplace, healthcare, education with retail and with F&B. It's very, very interesting.
Any commendation you would give to each and every city or municipality at the moment, how they should start at the moment, what they should think about? One commendation?
I think the one word I would say is localism. Really think local, forget cookie cutter, think local. How can we make and create what we call a very authentic spirit of place? And mix, and from a landlord perspective, from a commercial master planning perspective, create revenue models and lease models that allow you to mix independent brands with national and international brands, bring them together. Don't put the independent somewhere, you know, cheap rent and the internationals blend them and create your lease models. That's the first thing. And of course, the second thing is give me a call.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. That's very nice from you. Last, not least in the row, is Johnny. Johnny, Mr. Food and Leisure from ECE, director responsible for all, I would say, deals made in ECE in food and leisure. How is the situation in the malls so far, Johnny? Could you give us a sign or an insight what has happened in the past 6 months with the shopping centers and food and gastronomy scenery?
Yeah, it's been really tough. I'd love to say it's been easy, but it absolutely hasn't been. I mean, in every business where gastronomy exists, it normally is reliant on a footfall for other reasons. Walter, very sadly, is suffering from a lack of footfall in airports because people are there to fly. In the same way they come to our shopping centres to shop predominantly. I think we are moving away from being predominantly to being slightly less now retail, and making places that people want to be there to enjoy. But yeah, it's been really tough, and we've seen footfall going from, you know, the 100% of last year to 60% to 40%, because we've got such a broad portfolio in so many different locations. Some are doing better than last year. Some are doing worse, much worse than last year. The trend seems to be in big cities and then not in big cities. The towns, the localized communities seem to be holding up better. And those with the normal routine shopping, the food shopping, the cosmetic pharmaceutical stuff seems to be holding up more at the moment. It was coming back. And now we've had the hammer blow with the restaurant industry for coming on for 2 weeks now, with that being closed. And I think on a personal level, I find it really sad that the restaurant industry is being blamed pretty much across the world for infection rates, and it just isn't true. There's so much factual information that it isn't true, but we will weather it as an industry, and we'll come out the other side. And I predict there's going to be a bonanza time afterwards, because if you take people away from food and beverage, they will come back and they will spend their money. I'm sure of that.
Fantastic outlook. Johnny, in the back, I see one of your favorite and most popular places where you're working on it. A little provocative question. How many deals have you done in the past 6 months with the food and beverage industry?
Oh, I love you, Klaus. I miss you terribly because you always ask those provocative questions. Okay, let me give you some data on this. We're working with Brookfield, the investor owner at Potsdamer Platz. Great company to work with, very informed about the marketplace and worldwide trends. And we decided we were going to hold a restaurant and leisure day on the 16th of September. Most of my colleagues thought we were completely mad. I think some of the Brookfield team probably thought we were not exactly sane. We had over 100 tenants turn up on the 16th of September this year in Berlin to come and view the project. At the moment, we've got over 35 transactions we're talking about right now. We don't have 35 spaces. Even dear Heiner, Heine, we would love to have you there, please, because you are exactly what Ibrahim is talking about. A mix of the vibrant social places that do kick-ass food and beverage, that bring people to us. And then Mercato is going to be that. The picture behind me is the Mercato Metropolitano. They're signed, they're done. We hope to announce next week a huge leisure deal, which is very, very close to signing. We've got 11 other deals stacked up behind that we are working on that will come to fruition. We are fine.
Super.
And the reason we're fine is that we're looking to the future. We're not looking to the now. Anybody that's looking to now is looking to survive, and I don't blame them. What we need to do is look 6 months from now and then say, what mindset is the consumer going to be in then? And who is going to be around to satisfy that heightened sense of enjoyment that people are going to have?
Thank you so much, Johnny. I think we should open a platform, Reinhard, after that, to make a kind of deal-making platform for all those people who would love to call you after that session.
Yes,
to make the deals then. Or Heiner maybe to send some nice offers, because I think there are some offers in the market. Thank you so much for the first round. To the audience, please, we have the chance to raise questions. Please raise your hand or raise questions. And there's already the first one. Let me have a look. This is a nice question. Hi, without a name. Hi, are we seeing the end of the large mid-market restaurant chains like Byron? That's a question from UK, etc., that became monsters with massive investments. Questions towards our UK colleagues. Johnny, would you love to start first? And then Ibrahim, your point of view on that?
I'd love to. Okay, so again, let's be a little bit controversial, but true. Part of the problem with the restaurant industry is it pumped itself up with venture capital and private equity money that was determined and had to deliver new units, multiple new units to show growth, to show value, and then to sell and to sell on and to sell on. And there comes a point where that can't continue. And we ended up with a perfect storm, unfortunately. It's not about Byron, but if you look at the CVAs that have gone through in the UK, which is the voluntary agreements, where effectively operators can say, we don't want this space anymore, and what are you going to do about it, Mr. Landlord? Some of them have been used because those companies were actually dying, probably because they were financially insecure even before COVID. And some of them have been used as a very strategic instrument to get them out of commitments that they willingly made to landlords. And so I think that landlords are going to be more careful about doing agreements in the future, and we're going to want to do more with the up and coming brands. And I also think that we need to be super careful in the future about businesses that are being turbocharged with cash just for the reason of selling.
Thanks so much. Ibrahim, your point of view?
I couldn't have put it better, Jonathan. I think one of the scourges, one of the dangers of our business is the priority of exit before customers. Jeff Bezos said, be terrified of customers, not competitors. And one thing, if you understand consumers and you understand what drives their expectation, the one thing that drives their expectation and drives their loyalty is authenticity. And the one thing that a cookie cutter rollout, private equity driven offer does, because it's driven by exit, is cookie cutter, and it's not authenticity. And many of these brands you're referring to started out as being really authentic and really different. And it's as Johnny absolutely articulately explained, it strips out its authenticity. And I think consumers see right through it. There's no hiding place for any brand. The power has shifted and consumers have the choice like never before. The power to choose like never before. Be terrified of your customers, not of your competitors.
Thank you. I would love also to, Heiner has raised his hand. Heiner.
Just one, I completely agree. And I just wanted to say one phrase, what Chris Muller, a dear friend and advisor, told me. I don't know if probably most of you know him. When we had a discussion, I don't know, 10 years ago, and he said, because I said, I cannot understand. We are growing much too slow. Everybody is growing so fast, and we don't pick up speed. But I also cannot understand how they do it. And he said, listen to me, you're doing fine, because growth is never a strategy, it's a result. And now we are on the market now for 27 years. We do not have any investors, but we are growing much slower than all the other, or lots of concepts around us. But that we don't have pressure. So it's a much better way, I think. So perhaps we will not grow next year, or we will grow very slow. But then again, I believe in what Jonathan said. There will be lots of opportunities next year, and if they are good, we will grow. So, but we don't have to.
Fantastic, very good view. I would love also to engage Walter. Thanks, Heiner. Walter, because HMS Host is working with lots of international big brands. Walter, what's your point of view on that question? If you could stick on that.
We also have operations in shopping malls or in outlet centers. And I think we know what Johnny said and Ibrahim said. It's one part of the coin. The other part is, of course, that we see a couple of tendencies. First, I see an overall trend to more chains instead of I call it mom and pop or individual restaurants. That's like what you see already in the US, and that's in Europe in many markets. Statistically, you just see that. But I think if you also be honest, when you look at the food and beverage industry, I think we had an oversupply in restaurants and food service providers. So I think there need to be a shakeout anyway. There was already pre-COVID. But I also think most importantly is that if you look at it from a landlord side, it's easy to say that you want to have authenticity and small operators. But if you see the rent levels we have, combined with the oversupply, and especially in the UK market, and the question was to the UK market, and the increase in the rates on high street, the business model is deteriorating. So in the end, it's a catch 22. So there's not a universal answer. And you see this also now in the COVID situation, where you can see everybody suffering and everybody has the investments there. You know, food operators may have private equity, but also, let's be frank, shopping mall developers have also private equity money in their game, or high street owners of real estate. They also want to make the returns. And you see in all the markets we operate a big discussion that many landlords are not willing to reduce their rents, which maybe make the food and beverage operators much more suffering, as they already do.
We will come back to the discussion about rents in a few minutes' time. So please.
And again, I'm not saying I have an answer or an opinion, but in the end, there's only so many cents in €1, huh?
Yeah, sure. We have meanwhile a lot of questions coming from the audience, which is great. And please don't hesitate to raise some more. I have one more, which I would love to forward to Sophia, if you allow. It's a more general questions about the traditional food court model within shopping centers. The question is this traditional food court model within shopping malls dead from your general point of view? And what can be put in their place to drive future revenues instead? Sophia, from as a non-operator, what's your point of view on that? And then it's Johnny.
Oh, I think that we will still see food courts in the shopping centers, but in a different way. I have one example from Stockholm that I think ticks quite a few boxes on what is going to be what consumers look for after the pandemic, and that is in Teatern in Södermalm in Stockholm. Which is a small food court with fine dining chefs that has gone into fast casual. So they are offering both a fast casual and the convenient type of food, but still with a premium touch. And I think that this is one example of a type of food court that you could see more of in the future.
Fantastic, thanks. And I think, Johnny, you like the term food court, isn't it?
I absolutely hate it, honestly. I mean, it's been part of my life for so long. It's a bit like being overweight. I would really like to change it, but it's never going to happen. No, food courts, it's just put it in the bin, forget about it. Sophia's right. It's about a place where you go and enjoy great food. Let's be realistic about what's happened during COVID. More people have learned to cook in COVID than have done in the last 10 years because they had no choice. They've rediscovered ingredients. They've rediscovered how to produce things themselves. They know what good looks like. And an expression I used a couple of weeks back, again, I haven't done for years. I said to somebody, did you know good is no longer good enough? We've got to be so much better than that now, because our clients, our guests, our customers' expectations and knowledge has gone up hugely. And so if it's right to provide a food court with national and international fast food brands, then fine. If it's right to because that's what people want, then fine. But actually, there's a whole load of other answers which are much better than that. Oh, and by the way, the customer normally pays more for them as well. The guest enjoys it more and pays more money for it. And may I ask the operators around the table, how many of you have seen an increase in average spend during COVID? When the guests were allowed to go out, they spent more money per head. And that points to what the future is going to do for us. They respect the restaurant industry far more than they did 12 months ago. No question about that.
Great outlook. Thanks for that, Johnny. And there's questions which I would love to forward directly to the operators, because some questions have appeared. And of course, they ask, what about rents? Rent levels, have they decreased to an affordable rate? How about, let's say, a shift between fixed rents or net turnover-based rents? Heiner and Walter, maybe you may answer that at the moment. What was your experience in the past months concerning rental discussions? I think the audience is very, very curious to hear.
If I may begin, it was very, how do you call it? Ambivalent. There were some landlords who were very, 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 how do you say, cooperative. So they
open-minded,
open-minded, and they just said, yeah, you don't make any turnovers. We love working with you, and it's important for us that you survive. So we help you how much we can. And some of them said, let's have a look how the government solutions are. You don't have to pay anything right now, but let's talk again when we know more about those solutions. And then there were some who said, no, we have an agreement, we have a signed contract, and you have to pay. But these were just 2 of 20, so it's just 10%. And yeah, it's like in the real life, it's just those things you remember. And I think that's, yeah, you don't want to sign further contracts with those partners, and it's really very, very, it's just a minority.
Good to hear. Walter, your experience?
Depends where we are in the world. You know, our business is a concession business, so usually our agreement is a percentage of sales with a minimum guarantee. And here we have the same what Heiner said. So we had business partners. They said we have a contract. We also have our obligations. We also have our debt, and we have to pay. But I think in the end, with connections we made, we reached 85% results in reliefs. But having said this, we also had some clients where they said, okay, you don't have to pay now, you pay later. But in the end, it's just a delay of execution. So in the end, we are all in the same boat. Everybody has their commitments and their credit lines and their banks. And not only for food and beverage, it also counts for retail and entertainment and other services. And I give you an example. In the Netherlands, the government tried to make an agreement with big real estate owners on a covenant, but they just declined to do it. It's just is a kind of we do an effort, but in general, I tell you, on High Street, not a lot of movement was granted to tenants in order to really reduce or post the rent. And it's not only that. In the end, there is also discussion. What we entertained is that the rent is one, but also to make back your return on investment, you also need to have an prolongation of your rent as well, since you're losing 1 year or whatever in time to make back your investment as well. So it's a quite complex and difficult discussion. What we have learned is if you be open and transparent and you get in connection instead of writing legal letters, then the chance to find solutions is better. But I don't need to tell anyone on this webinar that there's no winners in this whole discussion, it's only losers.
Okay, thanks for that, Walter. Let's go, let's say, to an outlook in the future. So one of the questions from the audience was, I like that the panelists are talking about local, authentic, and community being part of the future. Maybe, Ibrahim, it's something for you. Do landlords need to adapt in order to create viable spaces for these local, authentic, and smaller concepts? What has to be done from landlord side? Ibrahim.
Yes, yes, and yes. I think, first of all, we've got to make sure as landlords, we understand what customers want, and what they want increasingly is not just local and authentic. They do want that, but they want a mix of that. They want a combination of the local and the national bigger brands. And I think what we've got to do, what landlords have got to do, is ensure that they can blend those into their mix, into their master plan, and make sure that the lease models accommodate that, as I said earlier on. But I think it's beyond just the retail and F&B operators. It's how we repurpose our places, as I said, to become community hubs that have different kind of use typologies brought together. How do we bring workplace into the public realm? How do we bring healthcare and wellness? How do we bring education, events? Now, how do we bring these and blend them together using retail and F&B as a catalyst, as an anchor, as a footfall driver? I think this is a really critical part of rethinking and repurposing legacy, what I call legacy shopping centres. And the biggest challenge at the moment are not the big hub shopping centres in city centres. They will recover and they will, I think, carry on doing well. It's the secondary centres that we need to really think about. And I think the big opportunity for landlords is there, because we're not going to shift back to working from the office. I think we are going to work in the main office some of the time, but the shift is not going to be, the shift is going to be working from home to working near home. So your local community centres, your local community high streets are going to be key for serving that community. Therefore, we have to bring the amenities, and that means local businesses, incubators, set up incubators as part of your developments.
Thank you so much. So meanwhile, we have a lot of questions, and I need to say that we are maybe not able to answer all of them, but we try to. There's one of our good friends from the industry, Brian Johnston. Welcome, Brian Johnston, who has wrote a nice question from Wagamama. I think most of you know him. He said, and I read it, before the impact of COVID around the world, the industry was already coming up against the situation of delivery and takeaway. This was at the time considered to be one of the big issues facing the industry. During the current phases of lockdowns, delivery has been a solution. Has this achieved a permanence for the industry? Maybe Sophia, from your point of view? Due the number of new customers that have experienced their first home delivery experience. Sophia, what do you think about this, I won't say buzzword, of delivery and delivery services? Could you give us your commendation or your point of view on that?
Yes, I'd love to. Delivery is really, and digitalization is really the two of the major trends. And I think that many people have tried this for the first time now. So it's really one of those trends that have been accelerated with the coronavirus coming in. And the quick service chains have been really prepared for this. So of course, this has been where we have seen most of the delivery and the digitalization and pre-ordering and delivery to home. But also, I think many customers now have been forced to get into the pre-ordering and the delivery system. So yes, I think so.
Okay, I think to the other colleagues, touchless or human touchless things or delivery or takeaway is a kind of, let's say, solution. Johnny, what do you think from a shopping center perspective? How should it look like, or what should be changed in the shopping malls or in the shopping operations so far?
Well, I think we're never going to go back to a world where operators don't consider the aspect of delivery and takeaway in their business. They may choose not to do it, and that's absolutely fine because it may not suit their business model. But those that do, we need to be able to provide them with the space, access, locations that allow them to do that. We're running various projects in our centres at the moment, and my team, the food, leisure and placemaking team, are looking at whether or not we should locate ghost kitchens in our centres, in quieter areas, in storage areas, whether we can increase the unit sizes to allow people to run takeaways from there, where they locate their doors, how delivery drivers and scooter drivers get to park their vehicles and then get in to get the goods. It's been a real learning curve, and I think that you know the operator has to make the decision, to be honest, Klaus. They have to decide, do they want to do those things or not? We're running a survey right now today across every one of our shopping centres in Germany to determine those that are actually open for delivery and takeaway during the current light lockdown. We will know by close of business tomorrow every single operator's hours, their demands, what they want to do, and then we're working really hard to deliver for them as well. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, does the product and the service and the offer work in delivery and takeaway? And if it does, we'll help them get there.
Thanks for that, Johnny. There's a new buzzword in the industry, which is called zero human interaction. It means trying to avoid the interaction between people because of social distancing, blah, blah, blah. Mm. Is that something for the future of the restaurant and gastronomy business, or is the opposite?
Well, I had a girlfriend like that once. Zero human interaction. Anyway, moving on from that, I think humankind has managed to do things to replace the human in labor-intensive tasks. If you want a zero human interaction, you can get it online when you buy something already. In terms of food service, if it is purely functional, you want to get a meal and you need it delivered, and you don't want to have an interaction with a human being, that is quite possible. It can be put through a box in your wall, and you can open that box and there's your meal sitting in there waiting for you. We mustn't forget, we're human beings. We crave personal interaction. Heine's business is built, every pillar of that business is built around people loving food and drink with each other. You know, and it's especially the glorious bastards concept. It's so integral to what we do that it's very hard to imagine zero human interaction and a successful food service industry going hand in hand.
Heiner, could you imagine to open a restaurant just operated by machines, robots, vending boxes or vending machines, without any personal stuff, Heiner?
No, for me, absolutely not. Our concepts are very much about the spirit in the space and in the restaurant. But what we developed now is especially for My Indigo, is an app for pre-ordering, for also order terminals, so that people just, but it's kind of an additional service for the younger generation who are used to it, and for people who have just a certain time budget, and to just make the service quicker and as an additional service. But we always are very careful that the interaction and the vibe is not missing.
Have you seen a big increase in using this kind of new technology, cashless payment, ordering, gamification, whatever it is? Do you use that at the moment, or do you see an increase?
Yeah, we did one thing which was very risky. All our restaurants are cashless now. So that was really, the decision was not very easy, but we are very happy that we did it, because it takes away a lot of cost, and it made the whole process back behind easier. So we try to do everything to optimize the whole process, but just to have more time for the customer, and to have to increase the experience with the time that we save on the other side.
Okay, thanks. There are two more questions, a bit more specific. The one is about new concept like Rotterdam, the Markthal, or Torvalhallen in Copenhagen, or timeout market, things like that. Maybe Sophia, a question for you. There are new concepts coming. What do you think? Are they hitting the market more, or are they improving? Is it a kind of oversupply? What do you think about these new concepts appearing on the market?
What are these market halls?
Like the market halls, like in Rotterdam, or like in Stockholm, for example. That's also a very nice example. Yes. Or in Copenhagen, or timeout, which is a concept now rolling out the concept all over the world. What do you think about it?
I think that's a way to get experience into the food service industry also, and it also is with all the knowledge that all the consumers have now, they're looking for specific types of products. You can also bring in the authenticity and the local resources, the local produce, the local suppliers. You can also bring in all the how to learn how to make things. So I think it's a nice way to address the new consumer behavior. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for that, Sophia. There's another question. How could food and beverage integrated with leisure? Ibrahim, maybe a question for you. Are you seeing that there's a combination of leisure and food altogether in the on a global view?
Yes, very much so. And one trend that we're seeing is what we call competitive socializing. We're seeing that people previously used to go to bars and clubs, so pubs, to talk and to catch up. Well, now we're seeing that people already know what each other is doing through social media. So they need something else to do when they go to have a drink and have a meal. So we're seeing competitive socializing, i.e. gaming, incorporated within leisure. So whether it be ping pong or crazy golf. So we've got a brand called Bounce. We've got a brand called Swingers, a brand called Drafts. So they're bringing gaming into social environments, which is very, very, very interesting. We're seeing brands also create kind of product brands creating experiences with leisure, with entertainment, with food and beverage. A lot of sneaker brands are doing that. So Vans are doing that. Peroni are doing that. We call them branded habitats. Very interesting kind of development that is. Lindt have just done that as well in Zurich. And yeah, so that's Johnny Walker is a big one for that. They're creating kind of these leisure and entertainment experiences that push the brand. Marmite, Kellogg's, all brands are really beginning to think about physical space and creating community spaces for their customers that are based around leisure and entertainment. So that is a very, very big part of the reinvention of retail, definitely.
Super, thanks for that, Ibrahim. There's one last question before we come to the so-called last round, because time is unbelievable, running like hell. So the question was maybe towards Johnny, how can high-end restaurants, or let's say star-decorated restaurants, operate with doing takeaway or delivery services? How can they survive with white blankets on the desk? And what do you think, Johnny, from your point of view? How can they survive and how can they work with delivery service?
I think it's lovely. It's a great question. I think every restaurant needs to look at what it can do. It can touch customers. So if you are a high-end restaurant, you can do a delivered meal kit, whether it's cooked or raw or semi-prepared. And I was watching from the Heinz Head in Bray, they were doing £125 meal delivery kits. Yeah, they were making more money on that than they were serving people at a table. They were in control of the delivery process, they were in control of the production process, and they didn't have to put up with whining, complaining customers because it was delivered in. I think some of them have turned their restaurants into shops. So they make things and merchandise it in the seating area as a food store because they're considered essential. Food stores are essential. The creativity of our food service industry has been astonishing over the last 9 months, and it will stay with us forever. This is a systemic change in how food service businesses consider themselves. And I'm so proud of that. I am incredibly proud of what our colleagues, friends, and businesses have done. So it is possible to be a high-end restaurant and to be able to serve that product to somebody, not in the restaurant necessarily, but in their home.
Thank you for that, Johnny. This is the start of our last round. So, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we couldn't raise all questions which have appeared in the question in the F&A box, but it was extremely vibrant so far. The last questions to all of you on the panel is, and you have 40 seconds to answer. Please consider. Give a commendation to the industry. What could happen or what could gonna happen in the next 6 months within our food and restaurant industry? Johnny, would you love to start?
40 seconds, okay. What's going to happen? We're going to have a bonanza. Pfizer is giving us the second best drug they've ever given us. The first one, you can guess which that one was. And I think come Easter next year, we are going to be looking at the future so strongly that the last 9 months of 2021 will be a bonanza year for the food service industry. Sign up, take some space, let's get on with it.
Thank you. Ibrahim, your 40 seconds and your commendations for the next 6 months.
Out of all the things that COVID has resulted in, the one thing I would say is very critical is that wellness is no longer a category. Wellness must run through the bloodstream and the DNA of all businesses. All businesses must have a wellness strategy like they have a sustainability strategy. I think that is a really, really important kind of thing that we've seen from COVID, and that is something that's going to be systemic and will be permanent. I think we're going to see a drive towards health, as I say. I think we're going to see a drive towards by appointment economy. And we're going to see, because of the by appointment economy, we're going to see what used to be luxury experiences becoming more and more mainstream. So, this has been accelerated by COVID. Of course, digital has, but the result of that is the importance of data. How do we think about data? Not just how do we monetize the experience, but how do we monetize the data from the experience? Let's think about how we're going to capture data in the future and monetize that. That's another key insight I've found.
Thanks for your longer 40 seconds, but it was great. Heiner, what kind of commendation would you give in 40 seconds to your colleagues in the industry as an operator?
So we also see this date of the end of March. I think until the end of March, it will be really, really difficult. And there will be lockdowns and reopenings and lockdowns, but it will be very, very hard. Then I think we will have a very, very good 21. So for those who survive this period, like Jonathan said, the rest of the year we see very optimistic.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. Walter, what would you comment as a global operator in the industry?
I think first, we should recognize that we lost some of our stomach share to the food retailers over the last period in COVID. And I think we need to do everything as food and beverage to regain some of that stomach share, as the food retailers are much bigger and they will fight to keep that. But I think the most positive I see is that I believe food and beverage is about experiences. It's about connecting people. And as I say always, the human being is not designed to be alone. And I think it's the social glue for our society. So that's the positive sign.
Thanks for that. Sophia, you are a charming final in that round. What's your commendation and your point of view?
I agree with Jonathan. I would like to give everyone in the food service industry a big round of applause. I think it's been fantastic to see all this fighting power and all this innovation. And unfortunately, some may not be making it during this winter. But for those who do, it's going to be a nice spring, I think, when we can start again even stronger. And I think also one important thing to remember is that consumer insights will be much more important in the future, to knowing your customer and knowing if you're in the location, who is around you, to know more about your consumers and your guests, and make sure that you can adapt your concepts for new business.
Thank you very much, Sophia, for that last word, which is a fantastic ending. So I have to say my key takeaway from this session, and we are now more or less at the end, is the industry, the food and service or beverage industry, is extremely positive thinking, has a strong backbone and a fantastic positive outlook for the future, independent how weak the situation looks like. That's great. I have to thank you all very, very much for your participation. That was a great discussion. I wish you all the best, stay healthy. And I thank you also the audience for raising the number of questions, which could not be answered, all of them. But that's a fantastic point to have maybe a second round in the near future. And then maybe with this second best drug in mind, what has happened with us with open restaurants, with lots of possibilities to meet and greet. And thanks to all, stay healthy, keep heads high. And now I give back to Reinhard, our facilitator and host. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very good idea to have a second round. Maybe in summer next year. That would be great. Yeah, it's my task now to close this fantastic session. Many thanks from my side for this extremely exciting and informative discussion. We were very pleased to have perhaps made a small contribution with this talk to understanding and dealing with the current very challenging time, and to show useful aspects for the future. And as mentioned at the beginning, we will send a summary of this discussion within the next few days with our newsletter. And yeah, many thanks to the panelists. Many thanks to all of you for watching. Greetings from Vienna, and goodbye.